welcome to Charlottesville Waldorf School for our very first virtual open house for our early childhood. We're going to start with a quick video. Now I'd like to introduce Chris Russ on the left, an early childhood educator who's been with our school for many years, and our school director, Amanda Tipton. And they will give a short presentation and then we'll take some questions and answers. Thank you.
Well, hello and welcome again. I hope you enjoyed this short video that just outlines some basic pillars and touchstones of our early childhood program. The Charlottesville Waldorf School has been serving the Charlottesville area since 1982. And we start with children from the tender age of 6 months. And we love to see a child take the journey from that 6 months with their mother all the way up to 8th grade when they are 14-year-olds about to head into high school. One thing that Anne didn't mention when she introduced us is that Chris is actually an alum of our school. So she is one of those students that started early out in the Charlottesville Waldorf School and couldn't get enough of us, I guess. So it's really nice to be here this morning with Chris. Our early childhood program consists of our parent-child classes, which I just mentioned, where a child between the ages of 6 months all the way up to almost 4 can experience a morning at school with their parents or a caregiver with an early childhood educator. And that then can shift into our toddler class, which is this program has a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to choose 2, 3, 5-day options based on your family's needs. Very gentle transitions as a first introduction to being away from mom and dad. And then the next piece of that is our nursery program for 3- and 4-year-olds. Still bringing the children along that journey of being a little more independent away from parents. And our final piece of the early childhood journey is the mixed age kindergarten. So we spoke a little bit in the video of the elements of a Waldorf program. If there are any questions about that, we'd love to answer them, to just leave it open to questions, because that's usually where we can really get into the nitty-gritties, I guess you could say. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Chris.
No, I think that's wonderful. Like I say, we are really here to answer your questions and offer you as much information as we can, and it's truly our pleasure to be here today.
So our first question is, what makes your program Waldorf? Are there any hallmarks of a Waldorf program?
Well, I think that definitely what the video does is sort of encapsulate those major points of what makes our program a Waldorf program. And if I can remember the order of how that was, maybe I will be out of order. But I think that one of the first things that you would start with is the environment. And our environments for our early childhood are, you know, it's like being at home. I think that's really important as a first introduction of being away from your first home, is to have a home-like environment. And in this phase for children, to feel safe in an environment, it's really important that they know what is happening next and that there is a very strong rhythm to their day. And that is what our Waldorf teachers really excel at, is planning a day, planning the transitions so that the children are really held not only through their day-to-day, but through their week, through the year, through the seasons, so that it becomes the world itself becomes a very safe place to be when you have a strong rhythm.
And, you know, with that as well, there is ample free and imaginative playtime, both indoors and outdoors. We really take up lots of home-like activities within the day. The curriculum sort of is life itself, you know, and you'll see that within the classrooms. The children, as Amanda spoke to, you know, there's a daily rhythm, there's a weekly rhythm, but within the daily rhythm, the children arrive and they're met, and then they join into the free play, and then they have circle and story, and, you know, the rhythm of the day is what really carries the children and carries the class. And that predictability, as Amanda spoke, is really important, because that allows the child to feel safe and secure, because they know what comes next. They know that Monday is nature walk day, or Tuesday is bread day. And so that predictability and that rhythm is very strong in our program, and it is very nurturing for these young children.
I wanted to ask also, in our video, we mentioned time in nature. Is that another essential part of a Waldorf program?
I would say yes. And, you know, nature is a big part of our curriculum. As Amanda spoke to earlier, we really look at the year, the 9 months that we are in session, as this journey through the year. And so the more time that can be spent outdoors, the more observations, the richer the experience for the child. But being outdoors has many other benefits as well. The children, when they come to us, whether they're 6 months in our baby and toddler class, 2 years old in our toddler class, or even our kindergartners, you know, preparing to enter the grade school, they are all working on actively taking up their physical body. And what they need to really develop that is movement. And the movement offered both indoors and outdoors is very, very important as they learn to walk and crawl and run and climb and jump. And so there is a very strong influence of outdoor playtime in all of the classes, whether they're toddlers or 6-year-olds preparing for first grade. There is ample time outdoors, both on the playground as well as in the wooded areas and on nature walks.
One of the other important pieces, I think, that I'd like to add to being in nature, and also even the natural materials that we use in the classroom, young children are 100% experiencing the world through their senses. And so if you are able to reach the child, it has to be through that, and through that medium of their senses. And so one of the bounty of sensorial experiences is really provided by nature. You don't have to purchase any toy that makes noise or anything like that. If you've been at a Christmas celebration and the children are opening their gifts, what do they usually play with? It's the boxes. Children can be so amused with sticks and stones and all of the wonderful things that you can find in nature. And part of that sensory integration is also the building of the imagination, because when you have those open-ended toys and the open-ended myriad of possibilities of playing in the natural world, they're developing their already amazing capacity for imagination, which in Waldorf education we really believe to be the basis of intellect. So it's very important in the early childhood program that we are building their imaginative capacities in free play and time in nature and with the natural materials. So they're just really getting a childhood that is nourished in their senses.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next question is about academics. How do you approach early learning and academics, and how is my child prepared for first grade reading and math in your program?
Well, that's a very good question. And as we spoke to a little, play. Work of the young child is play. And through play, through movement, the children are developing their bodies to be ready to take up later academics. And so within the different classes, the way in which we bring material to the children, such as circle material or story material, activities, craft activities, these are all brought to the child through the understanding of their needs, where they are developmentally. And so each class offers a very strong foundation. The circle with finger games and songs, the stories the children listen to, whether they're short nature tales for 2-year-olds or a longer fairy tale for a 5 or 6-year-old. These very important pieces of our program and parts of our day are laying the foundation. They're building the child's love of learning because they're having fun. They're actively involved in developing their language through nursery rhymes and through finger games and such. The children are developing their capacity for large motor skills and fine motor skills. Again, the large motor skills through movement, circle time, outdoor play time, building of materials within the classroom, whether it's a crate or moving a heavy play stand. They are building and developing their physical bodies. The fine motor skills you will see not only in the younger children, again, in an age-appropriate way, but you especially really will take notice in the rising first graders. Some of them are building boats. They're actually working on sewing a handmade doll. And so the children across all of our early childhood classes are working to develop those skills, which then allow them to have the focus and the ability to really sit at a desk for the time that they enter the first grade. And that is what really allows them to take up the ability of the academics into the grade school. The building of that, the physical body and the capabilities.
Would you also say activities, could you speak a little bit about baking and some of the experiences they have and how that may expose them to science or math?
Certainly. Well, again, what we're offering is going to be age appropriate, whether it's the toddler class, the nursery class, or a mixed age kindergarten class. All of our classes do take up baking. They, each class will help to mix the dough, knead the dough, and again, that's a very sensory rich experience. The children, some of the older children, perhaps they're helping to count out the little balls of dough. So here we're beginning to build our math skills. Perhaps the children are helping the assistant to set the table. So again, we're counting out the cups. We're counting out the placemats. We're bringing some of that awareness of counting and again, just building the language, the vocabulary skills. But it's done in a very natural way. We're not sitting down and saying, okay, boys and girls, it is now time to count 1 through 20. It's brought in a very natural way that the children can take up and digest at their developmental levels.
That's what I think that the important thing to note about academics, or foundational academics in children under the age of 7, which is our early childhood program, we really want it to Chris's point of life being the curriculum, that needs to begin in a real life experience that's tangible to them and not begin in something that's pretty abstract, which, numbers and letters and things of that nature. As adults, we forget how abstract those concepts are. But if they can begin with a sense of numbers by counting actual things that they need, that is something that has a lot more meaning to them than a lesson in numbers. So I think that that's really what stands out in Waldorf education, is that we begin with an experience that then can translate into something more abstract as they get older, to Chris's point of developmentally appropriate. That's really what we mean when we say that, is at this age, it needs to be right. They live here right now. They're not thinking about tomorrow and a test, and they're not thinking about what happened yesterday. They're thinking about right now. And so the more that you can really enrich their experience in learning these basic things. In nature observation is a huge piece of science. So if you can start with a lot of quiet time that is uninterrupted by adults, where they can just watch a worm crawl on a leaf, that gives them the skills that they will need to actually be able to watch a science experiment when they get into the 6th grade and make real observations. So there's so much foundational, there's so many foundational things happening in an early childhood classroom through play that it's really difficult to even list them all out in a forum like this.
I would just like to give just a small example of the way in which we might bring numbers in a very gentle way to our youngest friends, perhaps our toddlers. It would be through a finger game. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. I can count even more. 5, 6, 7, 8. My lady fingers stand up straight. 9, 10 are my 2 thumb men. And so in bringing nursery rhymes, finger games to the children, it's a very natural way for them to join, because children learn through imitation. They learn through modeling. And so if we as the caregiver, the teacher, the parent are modeling and sort of, they will naturally want to then imitate. If we are setting the model, they will want to imitate us. And who doesn't want to join along, right? It's just so fun. It's so rhythmical. It's a game. Learning is fun. Learning is a game, but it is just this natural experience that the child is having. It's not something that is being taught. It's something that they are experiencing with their whole body.
Thank you, guys. Okay, our next question is from a parent. How do you handle challenging behaviors and social conflict, or difficulty with taking turns or following directions with young children in your program?
Well, we have probably all experienced this, whether with our own children or with, a classroom full of children. I will start by saying, children are not born knowing how to be social human beings. It takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. And again, it takes the adults and the caregivers helping to set that example for them. And so the teachers will really be very conscious of the way in which they speak to others in the presence of the children. We are very careful to make sure that we are setting good examples. We are showing the children through our gesture how to be empathetic for those around us, how to be caring of the materials, the toys, our dishes at snack time. We're really setting those examples for the children, and they are these little sponges. They just soak it all up. And so it is so very important that we are, worthy of imitation. That is very important. Anyone who is working with or around young children wants to be very mindful that they are in fact worthy of that imitation. Sometimes children do have difficulty sharing or taking turns, perhaps speaking kindly to one another. And so the teacher will help to model, to help redirect if need be. Sometimes though, what the child really needs is to be taken under the wing of the teacher, the assistant, and really brought into a more physical, purposeful activity. If they're having challenges during playtime, it's a wonderful opportunity to bring the child to the table. Perhaps they can sit and color or help to chop some vegetables. Maybe it is time to set the table. So giving these children, we call them will activities, activities to take up with their whole being. And after they have really helped in that way, they've been purposeful in their activity, generally speaking, they're then ready to re-enter play in a much more harmonious way.
Yeah, I think that's when you're ready to send your child to school or to be in a program with other children, maybe the more individualized world that that child had at home has to shift because now they're part of a group. And that's really, you know, being socialized in that group is so important. I think I mean, speaking of hallmarks of Waldorf education, the social education all the way through, but definitely in the early childhood is so fundamental, especially when you juxtapose it to maybe some other early childhood methodologies that might be a little more individualized. Waldorf education definitely sees the group as a whole, and the child learns to move within that group harmoniously for the most part. And I think that behavioral issues, when you have a strong rhythm, when there's this expectation that they're moving together in the group, I think that they are lessened in many ways. That's not to say that they don't exist at all, but I think that the very nature of the strong rhythm and the hallmark pieces that we've already spoken to does help children at least know their expectations and know that they can live up to them. I think that's, you know, when you have a developmentally appropriate curriculum, I think that the stresses that might cause behavior, because behavior is a child's way of communicating with us, especially when they're small. I think that Waldorf education is particularly well suited to address things like sharing and conflict and things like that in the early childhood.
Yeah, I think of Waldorf education as a social education, you know, and that's a very important piece. We are growing and developing our physical bodies, our social capacities, as well as our emotional regulation and abilities to really read and interact with those around us. And so the young child is taking up so much work. You know, being a child and growing and developing is a lot of work. And so we are here just to help sort of shepherd them through that process. Something I think Amanda mentioned, and it just kind of reminded me of a very important point when it comes to working with children, but it certainly addresses and speaks to behavioral challenges or the sort. Consistency in our expectations. We want to make sure that we are consistent. You know, if the children are not sure what the teachers want them to do or expect them to do, or how they should or should not interact or behave with others, it becomes a very challenging situation. And the children really do want to do the right thing. They really do. But they need to know what the expectations are. And so the teachers, the caregivers, the parents, the more consistent we can be in our expectations and in our follow-through of any requests that we might make is very, very important. Here in the Waldorf School, we try very hard to keep our conversations, our directions to a minimum. And that way, when we do make a request of a child, the child quickly comes to know that we do in fact mean what we're asking them to do. There is a purpose for what we are asking them to do. And so by asking less, oftentimes you will get a better reaction because they know that there is real truth in what we're asking them to do. So consistency, consistency, consistency.
I think that was, as a parent, that was the best lesson that I learned from Waldorf education when my children were that small. Because it's hard. We all know as a parent that's hard work. And Waldorf teachers model that so well that makes it more accessible to you as a parent. That's been my experience anyway.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next question is about potty training. Do children need to be potty trained to attend the Waldorf School Early Childhood Program?
Well, that depends on which class you are looking to enroll your child in. If your child is 2 or 3 years old and looking to enter the toddler program, then no, they do not need to be potty trained. We are very aware that children during this phase of life are all developing, but all children are developing at their own personal rate. But these younger children are just beginning oftentimes the potty process, the potty training process. And so we do not expect that children entering the toddler class be potty trained. The teachers will be working with the families to develop a rhythm, again, rhythm. And generally speaking, over the course of that toddler year, the majority of the class who enter in diapers actually transition either completely potty trained or well on their way. But again, this is something that the teachers are going to be working with the parents on. It is definitely a team effort, and to really remember that children develop at different rates. So time is taken in the toddler class to really allow additional ample time for these potty tries. So that class, they are equipped to take in children who are not potty trained. Now, as your child enters into the nursery program or the kindergarten program, it is expected, however, that those children be potty trained and well on their way to being independent in the bathroom. Those classes generally operate with larger ratios, and it is important that those children be potty trained.
Yeah, I think that one of the conversations that I've had a lot with parents who are concerned about that boundary, I guess you could say, or that guideline, is that once they get into the nursery, it's really like they're starting preschool. And when you're thinking about school readiness, you want to know that your child will be comfortable and confident at school. And I think that being well on the way to independence in the bathroom is a huge piece of ensuring, or just setting your child up for success for their first experience of being in a drop-off school program. Every child is at a different level, and we totally understand that. But in terms of getting them prepared for that, as Chris mentioned earlier, it's a rigorous program. They're very busy, and so we'd like for them to focus their day on that instead of worrying about the next potty go or things like that. So it really is in the best interest of the child.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question here. How will nap time at school work if my child no longer takes a nap or does not fall asleep during nap time if my child is in the extended day program?
Well, for children who do need that extended day, and that is beyond 12 o'clock, whether it's 12 to 3 or even longer, some children sometimes need a longer day. It is very important that all children in our program beyond noon participate in a rest time. We do call it nap time, but the children do not need to sleep. They do, however, need to rest quietly on their cots. Something that we do, again, we're very aware that some children, whether they're 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 6-year-olds, really do still need that nap time, and they will sleep soundly for a good hour or more. Those children, we work strategically with the nap teachers to make sure that our sleepers are some of the first ones to transition into the nap room, whereas the older children, or perhaps those that aren't as prone to sleeping, we tend to bring them in a later wave. We have sometimes 2 or 3 waves of children that come in, a few minutes apart, and that way, those children that really do need that sleep get it, and those that perhaps are not needing as much sleep are not on their cots for as long of a period of time. But the children, they are all expected to at least rest quietly on their cots for 30 or more minutes, depending on the rhythm of the nap room, and also the time in which they're picked up. Sometimes it can be helpful for children that perhaps do not sleep or do not sleep often. If they are picked up on the earlier end of nap, that can be helpful as well. And I will also just say that children who do not sleep during nap time while on their cots, oftentimes the teacher or the nap teacher will give them a little bit of modeling beeswax to hold quietly in their hands, to shape and to mold. Or I've even seen one teacher made these really fun little marble runs out of a cloth. And so the children are given something quiet that they can engage in while still remaining on their cot, resting quietly. The nap teachers also tend to either read stories or sing lullabies. And so there is a little bit of stimulation, but very little, so that those who do need that sleep can certainly get that.
Thank you. I think that rounds out most of our questions. I wanted to point out that when you've been talking about nap and potty training, that those are for our drop-off classes, right? Our toddler drop-off class, our nursery and mixed age kindergarten classes. We also have parent-child classes. Could you just speak briefly, Chris, about our parent-child program?
Most certainly. Our parent-child programs are not drop-off classes. The parent or caregiver will actually attend the class with their child. We start with children as young as 6 months in our baby and toddler class, and that is really a wonderful, wonderful way to come, to gather, to meet new friends, and to build community with the very youngest of friends. But for our children who are becoming a little more mobile, we then offer 2 more parent and child classes. One of them is called the Forest Parent and Child class, and that is a really very fun opportunity for these older children and their caregivers to experience our beautiful outdoor campus. They partake in, wooded playtime, in our Fort Woods, we call them, our beloved Fort Woods. Again, plenty of sticks and stumps and leaves and whatnot to play with. And then the children partake in a very active circle time and story time led by their parent-child teacher. The third parent-child offering, which we currently have, we're calling our indoor meadow class. And that is a more traditional indoor class. Again, the children will attend with their caregivers, and they will participate in free play within the classroom setting, similar to what you see here. Sometimes the children will make snack, such as bread, but sometimes, depending on the session, the families will actually bring a communal snack. And the same is true for our forest program. That is a really wonderful way to build community, is through that sharing and that giving with others. And the meadow class, as well as forest class, does have a circle time as well as a story time. Most of these classes are also rich with activities. They're general seasonal activities which are brought to these families. And that is just one more way in which we here at the Charlottesville Waldorf School are really helping families to take up this seasonal journey and experience with their little ones.
Thank you so much, Chris. Is there anything that either of you would like to add? Any topics that we haven't touched upon that are?
I'm a little surprised that we haven't touched at all on the reason that we are having this virtual open house. I think that everyone is really looking into next year with a certain level of uncertainty, and particularly with young children, and how can we keep them safe as we return to school. We are currently looking at the incredible campus that we have, which really presents a lot of outdoor spaces that we're hoping to be able to utilize in the event that we need to lower our ratios and things like that. But we will be completing a pretty comprehensive plan over the next few weeks. And once that is, we're ready to unveil that plan, we'll definitely be in touch. I'm sure that as we were talking about communal meals and children making bread and those sorts of things that we really took for granted up until just a very short amount of time ago, we know that there are going to need to be alterations to those kinds of activities. And our commitment always is for the well-being of both our students and our faculty. And I just wanted to point out the big elephant in the room, that we are definitely working toward a safe opening time, as soon as possible. So I'm hoping that everyone is staying safe, and that we can all gather soon together again at the Charlottesville Waldorf School.
Thank you so much. This concludes our virtual open house of our early childhood program here at Charlottesville Waldorf School. We hope you'll come check out our website at www.cwaldorf.org and come visit us anytime. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.